feel like this video is probably going to get interrupted. I'm literally expecting 2 different calls. This phone like auto hangs up when I get a call. Well, here this one's a classic, The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, translated from the German. A dizzyingly rich novel of ideas. But one reason I have this book is because I'm kind of a fan of Everett Ruiz, this 1934 artist and explorer who disappeared in the desert. And if you know, you know. There's an excellent collection of his letters, A Vagabond for Beauty. There's a chapter about him in Into the Wild by John Krakauer. There's many books about him, actually. David Roberts has written extensively about him. And it's a really interesting mystery, but he was also a really compelling figure and talented writer and artist. I feel very connected to him. And anyway, this book was one that he really loved and wrote about in his journals and letters home. What was the other one? Gargantua and Pantagruel was the other one. So I think I've acquired both of those just because I want to connect with my boy Everett across time and space. That guy's freaking awesome, man. I got stories about Everett Ruiz. I've tried to find him, and I kind of feel like I have found him. Super interesting figure. So highly recommend his letters, and go out into the country that he loved and experience that crazy wild desert. I find I have a lot of Germanic classics. I do have German ancestry. The Old Man and the Sea. Ernest Hemingway. I probably first read this when I was 11 or something, and when you're a kid and you read classics, sometimes they really hit you. Other times it's not sure what to make of that. I mean, I thought it was a good description of somebody battling to catch this fish. And even at a young age, I remember getting the tragic irony. I've since reread it a couple of times. This is an easy book to read. It's very short. Feels kind of allegorical, but more of an allegory of feelings. Personal battle with extremes, struggling to win, and even winning is losing. It's interesting, and it seems well researched, and it has cultural elements that are used well. Hemingway writing about, there were really people fishing off the coast of Cuba, etc. I once had the idea to adapt this into a movie, but the movie would have the entire book read, and you would see it all happen on the screen as it was read, and the idea was more like any book that was short. I just would like to see a movie done that way, where it's like a book on film, just really directly. I think on some level it could be satisfying. I think on some other level it could be really unsatisfying, but I'm kind of curious. Yeah, but something short like this would be a perfect subject for something like that. This is also very visual and cinematic. It's really just a big scene, getting a fish. This is J.G. Ballard's famous car crash novel. People who can only be turned on by car wreck type situations. Very weird. Turned into an NC-17 movie, which I haven't seen either. Have I? Oh, I probably have. J.G. Ballard. But after I read The Crystal World, I was like, I'm just reading everything by this guy. This was amazing. Look, he's got an Anthony Burgess quote. It's the guy who wrote Clockwork Orange and Total Dialect, of the future. Droog speak. It's a nice, simple, cleanly made paperback. I like it. This intrigues me, by Gunter Grass, author of Tin Drum. My Century. 100 interlinked stories celebrating the 20th century. A century in all its grandeur and all its horror. I love stuff like this. The passage of 100 years in under 300 pages. Gunter Grass. My Century. I like that cover. I'm into it. Good old Dover classics. They really are awesome. Just, lords of the public domain. They find and keep alive so much great stuff. And I love their sensibilities. And I love their solid bindings. Just excellent. They may look cheap, but a Dover classic is a fave. I don't usually leave stickers on unless they're just petrified on, which is the case. Yeah, this book's a little racy. Oh, cool. Set against a bleak New England background. I always like that. I'm wondering if Stoner, the book I'm reading now, kind of has this as a precedent a little bit. This seems to also be about a unhappy, empty marriage. Ethan Frome. Right, Edith Wharton. I love that part in Catch-22 where he's like, yes, the Bible was a book, but so was Ethan Frome. So was Robinson Crusoe. Like many books I own, I have not read this. This, I picked up because it's a beautiful book, and I'm just so shallow. Pretty. It's pretty. I like it. My brain shuts down when I see beautiful book design like this. Just like, I must have this. And then I look at it and I'm like, yeah, this actually looks pretty interesting too. Detroit, a play. Like I've said, I'm collecting plays that I can read and think about when I write the chapter of my book 2 of my book that is a depressing play. About a time in my life when I was like, this is like a depressing play. So that seems like an appropriate format to write about it. A suburban story. I'll tell you, the suburbs are a key topic. If you want to understand modernity, understand the suburbs. My research into it just never ends. I'm always learning new stuff about the suburbs. Like, the suburbs couldn't exist without cars. So they're entirely this weird interconnected phenomenon with cars. You can't work in one place and live in another unless you have just an absurd means of getting there. So it made this impossible dream possible of like, you can have your own space with some elbow room. You could have a house. And at what expense? Driving all the time, and infrastructure built entirely for cars, really like the armoring of every city. And that has social and political effects. Nobody writes about it better than Mike Davis. Highly, highly recommend him. But the suburbs are a super interesting topic. The book Communitas is also a super interesting nonfiction read about suburbs. And so is The Long Emergency by James Howard Kunstler. That's just an incredible book. But it's a great, rich topic. And, the suburbs are probably the future ghettos of America. It's already happening. They are places that only can consume and they don't produce. And they require fossil fuel usage. So what happens when free, cheap oil goes away? It is a finite resource. Anyway, it's all bound up. It's so interesting, I think. And then the suburbs create these expectations that they bring back to the city. So like people that live in the suburbs go into the city all the time and they're like, where's the parking? I can park easy in the suburbs. And so the cities tear down historic things, and it's the suburbs are reshaping cities in a really bad way to be more like suburbs. And meanwhile, it's all just getting more for the cars that take everybody between it and becoming this armored and now heavily surveilled and defensively built anti-homeless state. It's pretty wild, and the suburbs are a crazy part of it. But I want to read this. Pulitzer Prize finalist and scary funny. Okay. Yeah, they don't give the Nobel Prize out every year. So when something gets the Nobel Prize for literature, it's like super cool. And usually it's going to have some merit. I love this idea. It's like Day of the Triffids, that horror movie. Everybody goes blind. That's a crazy idea. I used to think if I ever lost my eyesight, I'd just like kill myself, honestly. Like that would be so hard to live. And then I worked at the New Mexico School for the Blind, and I saw all these people with really fulfilling lives. Some people that don't seem to even think about the loss of sight sometimes. I worked at a bunch of different schools in their VI departments with that job. And yeah. Like there's a bunch of senses we don't have now. We don't have sharks' ability to sense electrical fields. What else don't we have? Tim O'Brien. This one, people like to assign this one. Well, because it has that title story that's excerpted from it a lot. And it is a cool idea that we illustrate who we are by the things we carry, And these are unforgettable. And there's a larger point to these stories too, and that is what needs to happen in print to convey what happened in reality. So like a soldier will see an atrocity involving one person and it'll just haunt them. And when they tell the story, or when the author tells the story, they'll change it to 50 people just because they're trying to get the same effect, the same feeling. Not to relay the physical sameness of what happened, but the felt same experience. And so it's a really interesting exploration of art and all that stuff. It's a cool book. Tim O'Brien's a good, smart writer. Just read everything by him. Also, don't forget I made him lattes, my claim to fame. Well, I think I got this one just because it's a New York Review of Books book. The Silencieri, Antonio Di Benedetto. Here's why I picked this up. A bridge between Jorge Luis Borges with his mental labyrinths and Roberto Bolaño. Oh, Chilean. Someone writing a book. Oh, this is great. Oh my gosh, I feel so seen in fiction. Like there's a million representations of aspects of myself. I'm like, oh, there I am. It's very easy to feel like Walt Whitman in those moments. Like, I'm everyone. They do say if you read literature, like there's science behind this stuff, you have you're likely to test as having more empathy. You know, I mean, how could you not? You're like getting all these lives. I love that quote that's like, most people live only one life apiece. Readers live thousands. You know, that's like so true. And this person just fussing eternally about getting the perfect conditions to write. Wow, another beautiful New York Review of Books edition. Their reprints are amazing, and their bindings are top-notch. Best known for an anti-fascist novel. Okay, I'm anti-fascist. You know, it's because I don't like having a boot on my face. It's just psychologically penetrating stories about corruption and circumstance. Translated from the German. This book is hilarious. I got somebody to read this summer, and they also agreed it was hilarious. A young guy at a summer camp I was working at, and I picked up a copy of this at the thrift store. I was like, read this. Because I was just like, I picked up a bunch of books, and I was giving them away to all the people in the group. Because I'm like Johnny Appleseed, but with books.